Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Create It and Crush It Masterclass. We have Keri here today. Keri, Gavin, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are on Masterclass number 8, which is crazy. And we're talking about your money story as a creative entrepreneur. So basically how to let go of the scarcity and really tap into your abundance mindset. So I'm so excited to have Keri here to talk to us about this because she is an expert on this. She's done a ton of her own money work and she really knows how to help and facilitate people through this. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit, Keri, and tell them about you. Cool?
Sure.
All right. So Keri is a business and mindset coach for creative entrepreneurs. She helps them to reprogram their brains, feel enough, and take inspired action through her one-on-one coaching so that they can create the income, clients, and fulfillment that they really desire. And she really knows about this because she has run her own creative business for over 10 years now and understands the mindset shifts that go on with that and how every level has a new devil, right?
True story.
Cool. All right. So I want to start with 2 things. The first is I would love for you to just tell everybody a little bit about your background and your story.
Yeah, sure. I am also a mom and I've had my creative business since my son was born. I started my photography business based out of not wanting to, I used to be a teacher as well. So I didn't want to go back to teaching and I started this as like a hobby. I didn't know it could be a business. And then I just kind of jumped into feed and thought, well, if I could make a living while I'm with my kids, like, great, I'll do it. I actually had no idea that it was like 20% shooting and 80% business.
Surprise!
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, great. So there was a lot of like learn the hard way, figure it out as I went. And I invested in a lot of different programs and courses and things to kind of figure it out. So I definitely have been through the trenches. And after that, I decided that, having done all that work myself, I really wanted to help others that were in the creative field, whether that's coaches or graphic designers or photographers, kind of navigate those waters because I know exactly what it's like. So that was really the basis for my coaching. Yeah.
I love that you said too, that you were like, I didn't even know this could be a business. Like, I think that's what happens to a lot of creative people. Like I was talking to someone the other day and they were saying like they have this like super big passion for like creating art and they do art projects and they're amazing at them and they, just feel like it's not an opportunity there. And lo and behold, they started selling on Etsy and it has become a big opportunity. And, same thing with your photography, right? Like as soon as you kind of open up to that and get in the mindset of it, like it really can be a business. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it really is. And that was something that I really was not kind of even open to. I didn't know anybody else that was doing it. There's always photographers, but nobody that was kind of my style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really more of like a lifestyle kind of, I always say that real life is worth documenting and that's what I do. So I kind of look through my camera like a mom and give these families those memories. So it was very, it was kind of by accident. And then I got divorced and it was like, you have to do this. So
very on purpose.
Yeah, it was like a violent shove into full time. And honestly, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it forced me to show up and it forced me to uncover this other path that I was led to and support other people in this journey. Cause it's hard to navigate alone. It's so much mindset and nobody told me that. So it was definitely like, okay, got it. Great. Okay. So yeah, it's definitely important.
I love that you said like navigate alone because that's like one of the questions I love to ask all of the guests on here, which is like, what has support and community meant to you in your business? Because that's really why we're doing these master classes is because we all have such amazing, unique skills and we can be a rising tide that lifts all ships when we're all available to share our uniqueness and our skills. So what has that support and community meant for you?
Yeah, that's actually really significant for me because when I first got into that business, there was a lot of like, it felt very cutthroat and people didn't want to share and, and I never I was a giver to a fault. So that was an adjustment. And once I discovered a community that was sharing and was teaching, that was a game changer. And for me, as far as my coaching goes, it's, that's very much what has made me who I am, because that's the only thing I really know how to do, is to help people kind of through that water too. So I can't imagine going that alone, but I know so many creatives that feel like they have to figure it out. Like this is just their thing. So it's kind of like, if you can just lean into the support that's available, that's going to make all the difference for you. I know firsthand it made all the difference for me. So it's
like, you don't get a badge of honor because you decided to like not get support, right? Like it's so interesting how it can seem like that though, right? That like, you know, you win the game because you decided to like go it all alone. It's really like, it's the quickest way to lose, right?
It really is. And I actually was just saying that to a friend the other day. Like, there's no reward for reinventing the wheel. Like, there's so many resources out there for us. Like, what? Don't do that. It's crazy. So
yes. Awesome. Okay. So that was really helpful. Thank you. I'm glad that you shared that. Yeah. So now let's kind of dive in, start talking about your money story, how you can let go of that scarcity place. Like, what are the steps we can start to walk through to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things for creatives to kind of first and foremost lay the foundation for is to recognize that, you know, this abundant mindset isn't specifically tied to dollars. So that is like a really, really important foundation that we need to really kind of get our heads around before anything, because while the money part is important, you know, abundance can look in a lot of different ways. It can come in a form of clients. It can come in planting the seeds. It can come in all different avenues that I think people kind of get all twisted about when it's not actually in their bank account. So that's like the number one foundation, the pillar that has to stand on, you know, everything has to stand on, is that it's not specific. This abundance mindset is not specific to dollars. We're not exchanging that.
I love that you said that, because I think that like, that's like one of the things you hear a lot when people are like maybe talking about the law of attraction for the first time or whatever. They're like, how can I pretend I have a lot of money when I don't?
Totally.
Right. And some of the exercises you hear are like, carry $100 in your wallet and walk around and say like, I can earn, or whatever, I can
spend it.
Spend that. Exactly. I was say earn it. Spend that. Exactly. And really you're like, that's a jump for your brain. Like, why don't we just start with like the abundance that's maybe already present or available to you in a different way? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a significant game changer. And I remember struggling with that initially, because in this, you know, creative field, I had discovered, you know, The Secret and all these things. And I was like, yes, I'm in. And then I'm like,
I'm in.
What? I don't know what's happening. This is not like, I'm saying the things, I'm doing the things, but like money's not showing up. But yet I was making connections and I was meeting clients and I was, you know, friends were referring me. And it wasn't until I really opened my mind to the opportunity that abundance isn't just this dollar thing that we've given so much power to, which I'll get to.
Right. And it comes, right, when we are open to other forms of it.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is really important along those lines is that I really don't think this abundant mindset, this foundation, has room for comparison. And this is something like really, really dear to my heart. And, you know, there's the quote that says comparison is the thief of joy, which I believe in my core. But I think the thing in the creative field it's important to remember is that there is literally no one else like you. No one else has had your story. No one has had your struggles. No one has had your creativity. So you can't compare yourself to someone else.
No one like looks through the camera like you do, or creates like you do, or coaches like you do, or whatever, right?
And it's so funny. I just had that experience again. This has happened a million times, but this weekend we were away and I gave my fiance my camera to take a picture so I could actually be in it and prove I was there. And we were standing on this mountain in New Hampshire and, you know, we were setting it up or whatever. So he took one shot of me with the kids and I took one shot of him with the kids, and we took the exact same spot and they looked drastically different. And I'm like, okay, we'll do that.
You good at this.
Yeah. So it just was such a reminder that, like, you know, you are you. So you can't compare to a photographer down the street or a graphic designer or a brand, you know, coach or whatever, because you are talented with your own experience. So that's part of the mindset of this abundance where, like, you can't compare that. it's just not, it doesn't work.
Like, I don't only have abundance if my gifts look better than hers, or like, I don't only have abundance if I have more clients than the person next door or whatever. Right.
Yeah. And it's really funny because I think about how, it's so easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole. And then it's like, you're playing to your critics. So don't play for your critics, it's like, that doesn't work. You can't say, I'm going to compare to this person and then I'm going to be like them. And then I'm going to get criticized because I'm just like them. Like it doesn't work. You can't do it. So I think it's important to remember that for sure.
So what do you suggest? Like, people start like noticing what's coming in, tracking it. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I think first and foremost, it's important to kind of really get curious about your unique skills and how that adds value to whatever it is you're doing, because I think that's a big part of understanding what's coming in and how that's very different for everybody. And I love being able to track things that are unexpected, that, whether it's a new client or a new contact or whatever it is, where it may not be dollars yet, but those are opportunities. So it's a different feeling. It's a different energy around that.
Yeah. I actually had this experience a while ago. I had a client and she had set like a really high money goal for herself for that month. And she was like, oh, I didn't meet it. I'm like a little bummed I didn't meet it. But she had won, well, it was a long story, but been gifted this like amazing trip. And I was like, okay, but like, if you factored that in,
totally,
like kill that goal. And it's kind of just like reframing like how things come to us, right? So she was kind of like, oh, I didn't meet it. Yeah, I got this trip, cool, whatever. But anyway, I'm like super bummed about the money thing. And it's like, hi.
Yeah, totally. It's
right?
like you have to stay open to that. It's like you have to unlearn or kind of unthink the way you think about abundance. That's really such a trigger for people, is they think abundance equals money, when it on some level it does, for sure. But like, there's just so many opportunities for it to come in. I think staying open to that, like, hello, you won this. Like, it could come in all forms, gifts or contacts or opportunities or whatever. So
that turn into money, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
okay, cool. So number one is for sure, like, reframe what abundance means to you and be really available to look at all the ways it's already showing up for you, right?
Absolutely. For sure. And then I think the second step that, kind of blends nicely from that is that I think we need to give ourselves permission to dream what that abundance looks like. I think that's like such a big part that people don't even dare to dream. So if you want permission, here's your permission, like, write it out, say what you want, figure it out, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And you have to actually get clear. I think that's such a big part of the abundance part, and this mindset that like, you can't receive what you don't know you want. So if you aren't clear on what you're actually looking for, or what you desire, or what you're calling in, well, it doesn't know to show up. Like, you don't have the opportunities. You don't have the doors that unlock because you're not even really sure. So I think it's really, really important, how many hours do you want to work? What days of the week? How much family time do you want? Like, real legit, measurable goals or dreams or whatever that you want to make happen. I think that's the next layer to it that's really, really important.
Yeah. And I think as humans, we're like programmed to do the opposite, right? Like, I feel like, and this is a universal thing, but like, you could ask almost everybody and they're so good at telling you what they don't want. But when you're like, cool, you don't want that, but what do you like really want? They're like,
I don't know. It's not that.
Right. Like, I want not that. And it's like, we have to start naming what not that is, because if not that will keep showing up. Right.
Absolutely. And that's something that I say all the time to clients and friends or family or whatever. Like, in the contrast of knowing what you don't want, you also know what you do want. So the same energy that you're spending on, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, or this isn't coming, you could be using that same energy to what you do want, right? Like, what is coming, what's opening up for you. So I think it's really important, like, all your past experiences that have been frustrations or whatever, they've gotten you here. So now you have the opportunity to see what you do want and go with that, because that's an entirely different energy.
So funny. So one of my friends, her name was Jessica Ely. I'm not a mom. So she was telling me about how, like, when you talk to kids and when she talks to her kids, like, they don't understand negatives. Like, if she says, like, you can't wear polar bear pajamas tonight, they're like, polar bear pajamas?
Totally.
Sweet, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And then they're stuck on this, like, polar bear pajama thing or whatever it is. I don't even know if that's what she said. I can't remember. But the universe is similar, right? Like,
absolutely.
if we're stuck on the, you're not wearing polar bear pajamas, like, they're like, here's all the polar bear pajamas. So I think it's almost like we have to treat it like we're talking to a small kid, right? And like, we're in that place of helping them understand, or helping the universe understand what it is that we're available for and want.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, it's a great analogy to think about it as a child. Like, what is the clearest, simplest way? There's no need to make it long and drawn out. And like, it's just to the point. This is what I want. There's no explanation. There's no justifying, but it's exactly right. If you tell your kid no, that's exactly what they want to do. It's like, okay, well, I shouldn't have done that. So if you can present it like, hey, we're going to do this instead of, you can't do that, it just feels really different. And it's the same thing for our businesses too.
And why do you think so many people are scared? Like, why are we so available to talk about what we don't want? And why are we so terrified to talk about what we do want?
It's a really good question. And I think that it mostly comes from fear. And that comes from being really available and vulnerable for ourselves. Because if we say what we really want, like if I really want, to work with these clients, well, that means I have to be available to receive the praise and the good stuff. Yeah. What's the word? Like, not accolade. What's the word? I'm like, well, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Like any kind of, positive. Yeah. That's coming in. I have to be available for that. And I have to be able to be okay with providing something that helps somebody else with getting something in return. That's such a big deal for people.
Right, because it just challenges our belief system, right? It's not that it's not good. It's not that it's not technically what we would want.
Right.
It's that it's like really outside of our comfort zone, right? And when we claim it,
absolutely,
then we're like in the position of like actually knowing what we want, having to own that we have to make it happen, or that we're available to make it happen, right?
Absolutely. And I think the other piece of that is that we actually have to embrace where we shine. And we've been conditioned so long to not outshine other people.
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard for us to stand in our power and say, hey, I'm really good at this. And I can be okay with somebody saying that I'm really good at this too. So I really think that it's like, we like the struggle. We like to say like, oh, I don't have any money, or, oh, I'm a starving artist, or it's so much easier and it's safer, right? Like, it's easier to be a struggling person rather than an abundant and, smart, giving, whatever. Not that people aren't that, but that space feels different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. I'm reading this beautiful book right now, and the tagline is like, for the woman who thinks she's both too much and never enough all at the same time. And it's like, that's exactly what you're saying, because usually we think it's one or the other, right? We're either too much or we're not enough, but most of us are actually somewhere on the scale of both. Like, and we're just trying to stay right in that middle and not outshine.
Not be the other way. Totally. Absolutely.
Not be too struggling, because that doesn't look good either, but just be like struggling just enough, right?
I want to be relatable. Like, I want people to be relatable to me. So, and that's what we do, right? Like, even if we're out somewhere and someone says like, oh, I love your dress, it's an automatic for people to be like, oh, it was Target, $10.
What? You're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Like, we're like, okay, thanks. Me too. Yeah. Like, what? So I feel like it's that, that same feeling. But anyway.
You're so right. Like, not like always kind of like bringing ourselves not too far down, not too far up, just like right there in the middle, right?
Totally.
We're not wanting too much or asking too much, but like what you're saying is claim what you want and be available to show up for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So know what you want.
Know what you want. Dare to dream.
Awesome. Okay. What's the next step?
So the next step that is on this layer is to uproot your scarcity mentality. And sometimes our baseline is something that we have no idea about. And we have this primal instinct to stay in this safe or fight or flight mode. And it's something, when we compare ourselves, it's like an automatic, well, I can't do that because they're doing that. And I think it's really funny. And I relate it to, I think about like, if Dave Matthews never wrote another song again because all of these other people wrote songs, that would be ridiculous, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's crazy. There are thousands of songs in the world. So of course there's room for everybody. So I think this idea of scarcity is like, if I take my piece, somebody else isn't getting theirs. Mm-hmm. And it's such a sad place to be because that's not the truth at all. And I think that we get sucked into that, like, if you're not clear on what you want, then it's hard to imagine it being enough for everybody. And it gets really muddy in those waters a little bit. So
yeah, like if I get this thing that I want, like if I get these 10 clients, it means my friend who's also a photographer or coach or whatever is going to not get them, right?
Right.
And really it's like, or you could both get 10.
Right. There's more than enough. Like, mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And I think, the foundation of that comes from your money story. So whatever your beliefs were growing up, whatever you heard about money, whether it was conscious or not, most of this is unconscious. Yeah. And that you have this money story going on when you have a physical reaction to money in general, right? Like I grew up and money was like, there was a crazy money story going on in there and there's still work to be done. But I will say that I didn't know that people did not have anxiety around money. It was like shocking to me.
That was like breathing. So natural, right?
Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? So I think it's just really interesting that like, I didn't know that. And it wasn't until I uncovered that and then got to decide for myself what I actually believe and what I think, is a healthier mindset and how drastically different that feels than like what I was told. Money doesn't grow on trees and, what do you think I am, Rockefeller or whatever? People say that all the time. And there's all of these stories of like, just struggle and money's so hard and you have to work really hard to get money. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. But yeah. I didn't really check in to see if that's what I actually thought.
Right. Is that what I was told?
Yeah. Right. And I say that all the time. Like, is that true? Is that true? So I think, it's definitely important to kind of get curious about that. And when someone says like, what is your earliest money memory? Like, what is that? There were some parts of our family that had, businesses and were really successful, but they were like distant relatives. And then there was immediate family for us that it was always a struggle and multiple jobs and losing jobs and whatever. And I'm like, isn't that normal? Now that I'm older, it's like life-changingly different, but
yeah,
I had to do the work.
I love that you said like when you have a physical reaction to it, because I think that's really important. I don't even think we notice that sometimes, but so one of my money stories growing up was like, it's super, super icky and rude to talk about money. So when I got into this like entrepreneur space and people were sharing like, I had a 20K month or whatever, I was like, what? Ooh, like I could like physically feel myself being like, oh my God, my stomach hurts, right? Like
totally.
I could throw up. And then it's the same thing, right? I had to be like, but like, am I available to talk about that? Is that rude? Isn't that kind of cool and empowering? Like what are my thoughts, actual thoughts around that?
Yeah.
But totally that physical reaction.
Oh my gosh.
You're so on point there. It's like, notice where you're having those physical reactions to money because there's your clue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's funny about that is that, we have this innate feeling to stay with our tribe. And if our parents struggled with money, it's really uncomfortable if we make more than them, or it's uncomfortable if we outshine them or a brother or sister, things like that. But it's a very, like, I tell people to check in physically when you think about money first, because I think that's so telling. For me, it was like I couldn't breathe. I remember feeling like, it's just whatever. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is that, we don't I don't know how to say it. We it's just really interesting that like, we don't know that we're having those reactions until we shine the light on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
until
really
we say, "Ooh, why do I feel like I'm going to throw up right now?" Like
totally
something, right?
Absolutely. I think it, and it just comes back to like, I don't know. I just think it's like leaning in and really trusting yourself and not getting sucked into like what everybody else is saying, what everybody else is doing, and staying true to your path. And like, my reaction is very different than your reaction, but we both were able to navigate those waters and uncover our own stories to serve us, which is huge.
Definitely. And I think the other part too, and you tell me if you feel like this, but is that like it will still come up, right? So like recently, like I published an article and it was a HuffPost article and it said how much I made, right? I was so triggered when I would like went to post that and share that, because I was like, oh my God, like my family is going to be like, for real, Lace? Like, really?
I love it.
And so it still came up for me, but like, I know what my beliefs are now. So I can be like, oh, this is showing up and it's kind of like weird, but it's okay. I'm going to stretch. It's worth it. These are what my beliefs are. Right.
Totally.
But I think it's like, people think like they've like have to like bust a block or whatever. And it's like, it'll be there, but you just choose differently. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what's really important is that people, this work, this like internal work, whether it's money story or other things or struggle or whatever, I think it's so important to remember that like, this isn't a quick fix. This doesn't, it's not even a fix. Like, it's not gonna, you're not broken, but what you are doing is you're deciding for yourself. Right. And that growth only happens in the uncomfortable. So you knew that was going to be uncomfortable, but you also knew that it was worth it.
Yeah.
That was definitely something you needed to share, which was so awesome, by the way. It's so exciting. And, when I think about this money story internally, the one thing that always comes up for me is that, Cherokee tale or whatever about the two wolves being inside of us. Where, have you heard this before?
I think so, but remind me.
Yeah. There's two wolves that live inside of us. His grandfather is telling his grandson, and one is evil and one is good. And, one is like peace and joy and love. And the other one's like resentment and guilt and whatever. And the kid says like, which do you feed or whatever, or how do you know which wins? And the grandfather says, whichever you feed. And I love that because I think it's such a reminder of like, what story do you want to tell yourself? Like, money isn't bad. It's intrinsically has no value. And we have this way of putting this power on this thing where if we could shift the word money to, or whatever, current, whatever, to exchange, it has a very different energy around it. So let's ease off the power of this paper and coins or whatever, and give it more to the value of what we're exchanging. And I think that that's really important when it comes to your money story, and remembering like, money isn't the root of all evil. It's maybe the decisions you're making that might have something to do with it.
Like, and what you're choosing to feed, right?
Totally. Absolutely. So
awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's important. And it's just a reminder, that our thoughts are our beliefs, and our beliefs create our actions, and our actions are our reality. So it's pretty basic, but it's like, you have to remind yourself of that when you've been conditioned for years under somebody else's thoughts.
One of my favorite things that you said was like, you're not broken, right?
That's so true. So important.
Like, we always get to choose something different. We get to show up in a different way, but it doesn't mean that like, oh, that's what your family thought. Like, oh, you're screwed.
Totally.
Right? Like, there's so much available to grow from, change, show up for, but it's not like, you have this block, let's bust it, or you have this broken piece, let's put tape over it. It's like, let's just feed something different. Let's decide we're available for something different, right?
Yeah. And it's so funny because I feel like there's already this idea of shame and guilt and, bad decision making and whatever around money. But like, maybe we could just get a little curious about that and like give ourselves some grace and know that we were doing the best we could at the place we were. But like, you're not damaged goods. Mm-hmm. And I think people resign themselves to that so much. And it's unfortunate.
And then they own the story, right? So what you're saying is like, you're not damaged goods because you get to choose a different story. When you become damaged goods, so to speak, is when you're like, this is my story and I'm internalizing it and it's mine over and over and over again, right?
Absolutely. And I know that firsthand. I mean, when my business, after I got divorced and my business, my photography had to feed my kids, literally. I was buying everything I could possibly buy, trying to justify the expense because it was going to get me to the next thing. It was going to
every course.
Like any kind of anything that I thought was going to be it. And it never was. And that's because it was me that wasn't doing the work, right? Like I didn't have it all together yet. So it didn't matter how many courses I bought, and it didn't matter how many things I thought were going to launch me forward or whatever. But it's that inner story. And in that same time, I had posted about this the other day, like I accumulated all this debt and was like, oh my God, like this is terrible. Like now what? I have a business, I have kids, and now I'm a single mom and like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was that same feeling of like, wait a minute, like I had credit cards that I could provide for with my kids. Like maybe I can reframe this. Like without that, I don't know what I would have done. And without these opportunities, I don't know how I would have grown my business or had the, resources I needed or whatever. So it's really being mindful in your business about like, is it a bad choice or is it a good business decision, or like, what is it and how does it feel for you when you're spending this money or not spending the money or making the money, or how are you getting the money? Like, I think that's something that people really need to explore more of rather than just pulling the trigger.
Yeah. It's like, am I doing this from a place of like empowerment?
Totally.
Right? Like, am I like, so say like a client coming to work with you, Keri, like they're doing it from a place of like, I have some stuff, like I'm holding myself back. I have this story around money. I have this story around what it means to be an entrepreneur, and I am empowered enough to change that. And I'm empowered enough to know I need support to make that happen. Right? That's super different than somebody coming to you like, I am so effed. My money story is terrible and I need you to fix me like tomorrow. Can we do that?
Totally. And that's such a big difference, right? Like such a big difference of being like, I'm willing to do the work because I know that this isn't the best me I can be, rather than I just need you to tell me what to do and make this better and go away.
Like
really
fix me. And that's what you were saying. Like when you were investing at the time, you were like, someone fix me.
Totally. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. And it was, it just really wasn't, it just wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't a true story.
Amazing. Okay. So I think we just went a lot of places there, but like, if you had to sum that up.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that was awesome. What would you say for that one?
I would say, I think really uncovering your money story and really just getting clear about whose voices are you hearing? Is it really your own voice? Is that really what you believe about money? Is that really how you see your business? Or is it the conditioning that you've had over the years that's been telling you to be a certain way, And mind you, this is very uncomfortable. This is a really uncomfortable place to go, but it's a necessary step, especially if you're a creative. Like you have to know your worth and your value, which is what I think we'll talk about next. But, you have to know your money story and know that it may or may not be different than your parents, but you have to know it for you.
Yeah. So I think all of this is like kind of having a theme, right? The first is like, look at what abundance actually means to you. The second is like, look at what you actually want. And the third is look at what you actually believe. Like this is all of you getting back in touch with you, not like these things happening outside of you or that you're hearing or that you were told, right? So that's a really cool thing is like, we're just getting closer and closer to core and back to ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and the other piece I think that's super important in all of this is really understanding your self-worth. And that's kind of like the upper layer here where I think, it's so important to know your value and actually get comfortable with having a value. Like that's scary for a lot of people, myself included. I was like, wait, doesn't everybody do this? Like, how come it's, what do you mean I should make money doing this? Like, can't everybody do this? I don't know. Or can't this be anybody else's career or profession or whatever, whether it was photography or coaching or anything. So I think
that you have a unique skill to offer and that you deserve to be paid for it. Not like it's just like, right. Even if it's not a unique skill. What do I want to say about that?
But it's a unique perspective, right? Like,
yeah. Or like you bring a unique passion to it too, right? Like my dog's sitting next to me. So this is the best example I can come up with, but like, it's not a unique skill to be able to give a dog a bath. Right. But like the lady that like comes and she like has a mobile thing and comes and does, grooming and baths and stuff. She's amazing. She's so passionate about it. She's so invested in it. It's not even like a unique skill. It's just like the energy and passion and excitement that she brings to it. I'm like, you could do this all day. I don't want to do that. Right. Like, so I think that's part of it too, is like, the energy and passion that you bring to, say, coaching is totally different than like someone else's. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, it's really important, as we were talking about, like that very first layer, to recognize like, what is it that's different about you? Like, yes, you may have the same, area of business as a lot of other people, but you have to own what makes you you. All of your struggles, all of your gifts, all of that makes you unique. And if you can't really stay in that space and honoring that value, you'll never be able to get out of this money situation, like this crazy money story stuff, because it will always prevent you from, feeling enough and being comfortable in that area, which I think is so much of it.
So I would love your take on this, because I think this is like a pervasive thing that I see in the entrepreneurial space, is that we think our value equals monetary value, right? Mm-hmm. So like I hear a lot of things about like, if you're not available to raise your prices, you don't see your value. And it's like, I don't know if they're connected like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. And actually I've had some experiences with clients asking about, or other people asking, well, if you're not willing to spend, $20,000, well, then you're not serious in your business. And I'm like, what? Like, I understand the need for like, I understand the need for like showing up and like making a statement that you're like ready. And making the investment. But like, it's the same thing. Like your value has to match your energetic exchange, right? Like if I feel like I'm giving and giving and giving and getting nothing back, well, then the balance is off. Mm-hmm. So if people are paying me a certain amount of money, but I'm not accepting any kind of praise or, any kind of like good stuff that comes along with that, well, then there's a shift there that feels unbalanced, and you may not be able to notice what that is, but it has to do with exchange, whether it's monetary or energetic, but it's all related. So I think that, I don't know that I really just don't find the connection between like, you have to charge high amounts to be highly valued. Mm-hmm. It doesn't resonate with me, because I think that I can give a lot of value for free, but I might get, paid in another way. It might be fulfilling to me to hear how it changed someone's life, or I see moms have memories of their kids that now they're all grown up, or, whatever it is. I think value equals value.
The exchange of like, so whether that's like I'm coaching you and you're paying me and that's our value exchange, or like I'm giving you information for free and in exchange you're sharing with me your experiences or telling other people about me or whatever it is, right? It's like that exchange. It's not like my self-worth is not what's on the table here.
100%.
I love that you said that.
It's like an epidemic in the creative field, I think, where people value their self-worth and their value is given away to potentially critics or not the right people, right? So, and that's what I meant earlier about like, playing to your critics or playing to your fans. And I think there's this like, I know for me, like in the photography field, my heart and soul is put into these photos for these families. And I'm 100% vulnerable for them to be like, we actually hate them, which doesn't happen. But I mean, I'm available to that.
Right. Like that.
I don't know.
Yeah. That potential
it could be there, right? And if you're an artist of any kind or a coach or whatever, you might not be a perfect match. So your heart is just out in the world. That's it. But I also think that's where the most creativity comes. Like when you're that authentically vulnerable, well, then you're available to be your best creative self, you know, and serve whoever it is.
Right?
Yeah,
you're like
absolutely.
Giving of your creativity and it feels really good.
Totally. And the other piece to that, as far as like the value goes, is I think one piece that creatives are not super good at is the number side of it, which isn't as fun or whatever. But I also think creatives struggle when it comes to the value, because there is a baseline value that I think you have to know, like your actual numbers, you know, like the first time I ever looked at what my expenses actually were and what my hourly rate actually was for my photography business. It was staggering. Like what even took me to like have my doors open. I was like, I got to do something about my pricing, you know, but it's not until you know that because otherwise, you know, so many people that I've worked with have been like, well, the person down the street is charging this, but that's not you. Right. You know, like that, how's your business working? What? So I think it's important that like your self-worth isn't tied to the monetary exchange, but it also has to have a baseline in there.
Yeah, like you have to be an empowered business owner, right? Like you can't be so scared of the numbers or so concerned with like what the people around you are doing that you're not in an empowered place to go, what are my numbers actually, right? Because usually when we're not willing to look at that, we're just scared of money, right?
Yeah. And that just goes back to really like getting clear on your money story. What do you want to rewrite it as? How do you want to rewrite it? You know, and I think it's really important that people go to those places first before like the next technique or skill set or whatever, because that's the foundation.
Yes, you're so right. I learned this lesson the hard way because, like I said, my family was like, we don't talk about money, right? So I like went out into the world knowing like next to nothing about money and budgeting and whatever. And then I remember like being in business school and was like, there's like spreadsheets and shit for this. Like, that's really cool. Who knew?
Totally.
You could like talk about this stuff and track it, and you could like
so funny.
Know about it and like have a good grasp on it. It was like such an empowering moment for me.
For sure.
It wasn't like money spreadsheets. It was like, I get to be like really empowered around this exchange, right? I get to be really empowered to make smart decisions, not to feel like it's this thing that I can't look at or talk about or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so key.
So funny how our brains are programmed to work, right?
I know. And we get to reprogram, thank God.
Yes, exactly. And we are available at 100%. All times to choose something different, to reprogram them, to get empowered around money, to create a different view of abundance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, you know, that's what it comes down to, is that you have the chance to reframe things always. Like in the contrast, right? Like you get to see either like, spreadsheets, or like, this is awesome. This is great. This is a tool for me. I love this. Yeah. You know, it's the same energy. It's same energy out, but what you do with that is very different.
Yes. So true. That's a very good point. All right. Awesome. Anything else, or maybe just kind of like some summaries around like what people should be doing, what they should be walking away with, and like what they can do to kind of flip their script around all these things?
Yeah, I think, you know, I like to tell people the process of like shifting up your money story really comes from like first honoring what your money story is and having gratitude for it. And while it may be messy and painful and hurtful or whatever it is, like it got you where you are. And it is now giving you this awareness about where you want to go. So like there's a lot to be grateful for about that and have this appreciation for. Beautiful. And the next step, I think, is, you know, now we get to rewrite your story, and you get to be excited about that because you get to choose. You have so much available for you to decide what's going to serve you, what's going to be helpful, like what do you want? You get to create your life. You truly do. And now you have the awareness around it to really embrace that. And the last thing is just reprogramming your money story for success. You get to plan, this is the part where we get to say like, okay, this is what it was. Now we're rewriting it to be this way. And this is what's going to happen because of that. And just stay in that space and stay in that dreaming and, like be open to all the things and all the possibilities, because there really is so much out there and there's so many possibilities that like we can't even think up. And all we need to do is reprogram that subconscious and the rest of it takes care of itself. It's really just getting clear on that. So, and I mean, I guess my overwhelming feeling about this is just like, let's drop the badge of like a starving artist, whatever that is.
Yes.
And like totally embrace the fact that you can make a really good living, whatever that is to you, and believe that you're worth it. Like you're just worth it. You're worth it because you exist and it's in your core. It's in your heart. It's in your soul. Like that's what it is. So just go with that. Like stop resisting it, You just gotta believe in it.
Yes. Like I think so many of us have that feeling that we're like meant for more, or we're like not meant to be in this place of struggle. Like I think most humans inherently feel that they are not meant to struggle all the time, right? Like that's not why we're here necessarily. And so it's kind of like being available to decide that that's actually true for you, that inner calling is like real for a reason, right?
Yeah. And I think that, I think the saddest thing that I see that if I could, wipe it out is this lack of fulfillment, people living with this like lack of fulfillment and just like, oh, that's not for me, that's for other people. But you have this passion for something, whatever that is, helping other people or designing or jewelry making, whatever it is, like, oh, I couldn't do that. Like, I would really love for people to get super curious about that and really honor what that is and why that's showing up for you. And like, I don't know, like you can do anything. And it sounds like, when I was a teacher, I used to tell my first graders, like, you can do anything. And I really believed it, but I just feel like as adults,
we have to show up for it and have the right story around it, right?
Yeah. And I feel like adults give that away so quickly, I think it's so important to get back to that.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
This was so good, Keri, and this was so helpful. And I know that it's something that literally everyone can relate to, no matter what their piece of it looks like, what their story looks like. Like you were saying, ours look very different, but at the end of the day, it's the same shit, right? Like we have to redesign what we want our story to be. So you could just tell everyone like how they can get in touch with you, how they can learn more about you and from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a Facebook group. It's called the Heart and Hustle Tribe. And I also, my website's focusing on the heart. It's my coaching website. And I have, right now I'm really excited about helping people design a morning mindset practice that really sets them up for success, which I would love to jump on a 20-minute free call with anybody that's looking to kind of really start reprogramming their brain for these kinds of goals and dreams and things to set them up, and diving into your money story and all that. But I'm really loving connecting people with that first part of their day to kind of set up everything. So those are the best ways to kind of connect. And then one-on-one coaching.
Can they just PM you or find you on Facebook if they want to do that 20-minute session?
Yeah. Yep. That's great. I will, I can actually give you the link to sign up to if that's helpful, or my Facebook, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, by the way, jump on that, because if I had to cite like one of the most important things that has helped me create success, it's being available to do mindset work and making that like a non-negotiable part of my business, not like I'll journal if I feel good, or I'll meditate, or whatever works for you, right? But being available to do the work is like the thing.
Totally. And that was for me, that's what business, no question about it. I wish for sure that I had started with that.
Yeah.
I wish going back, but here I am. Now I get to help you.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Keri. Take her up on these calls. Find her in the Heart and Hustle Tribe. I'll put the links below. And thank you all for watching. And thank you, Keri, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.